There are various sports media podcasts out there, but this one hits different because on the Honest Something podcast here, I'm Bryan Fenley. We tap into my interviewee's personal side, the human side, along with talking about their career. But we get the well-rounded look of the person. My guest today is Renardo Lowe. He is a well-known sports television director working with a variety of different networks. We're going to talk about fatherhood for him as far as his upbringing, and yes, things about his career, the early start of pulling cable to where he is now. Fascinating conversation. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here is my chat with Renardo. There have been some big names to come out of Howard University that have gone on to make it big in sports broadcasting. Stan Verrett. My guest here, Renardo Lowe, is one of the many. There are so many others, but
Yes.
Renardo is right now a sports television director on a network level, and he joins the Honest Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, Tennis Channel, and other outlets. And this is a place where, as you know, Renardo, we're going to go beyond the scope of your career and a chronological look of your career. We're going to learn about the human side of who you are and learn about your upbringing, the personal angle, I think, in a way to get the full rounded look. And to understand the full rounded look of who you are, I want to start here because you, as a Howard University grad, are coming off today as we watched the NCAA tournament. As we tape this is the day of Howard University
Yes.
took on Kansas. We know the outcome and the result. How are you processing the game?
Obviously, very disappointed, but in a certain way, I'm very proud of the team. Proud of what Coach Blakeney has done, and not just the basketball team. In the past, couple of years, Howard men's swimming was in Sports Illustrated. The tennis team, the golf team, has a partnership with Steph Curry, and I mean, you can just name it. Soccer, softball. Like Howard University athletics, which is something that Howard isn't known for, has definitely been a point of pride for all alums.
Why has it been a university that has been a launch pad for so many people? You go around the sports media landscape, and Howard University is really starting to take over.
I guess, obviously the School of Communications has, been along for a long time. It's one of the places where not only is there a radio station on campus and there's a television station on campus. And nowadays, you see that quite a bit. But, Howard was, one of the first or at the forefront of having a place nearby where students can get hands-on experience. And I think that's part of what makes the School of Communications a great, I guess, launch pad for many careers.
What about your career and what you're doing now and what you have done would surprise you the most if you were to tell you, the college kid, that you would be going on and doing all these things?
Wow. I guess, obviously a lot of what I do is by, kind of the grace of others. And, there are many people, many teachers, other students and, people that I interned for that, really, took me under their wing and taught me, the right way to do things, how to tell stories, how to, be professional. And, I could probably tell you the student Renardo Lowe was none of that. And and when you get in a working environment, I intern also being in DC. There's a lot of places outside of Howard where you can intern. So I interned in the BET sports department, and I also got a chance to, because people would come to campus to recruit. So as a student, in a name of it, Bob Dekas, legendary CBS producer, came on campus to recruit, and I got a chance to meet him as a student. And so the connections you make, and then if you do a good job, and you meet people and you listen, you can absorb a lot. And then obviously right after school, when I go to Turner Broadcast and CNN, that's probably where the biggest growth took place.
What was your pitch to Bob when you met him the first time?
Wow, I think obviously Bob is a great storyteller, and I was along with my other classmates. We were just in awe. This was, and he had produced the Final Four. So when the producer who had produced the Final Four, um, you know, is in your classroom, you listen, and I was in awe of storytelling, and I think just a love of sports. I think the one thing that you take for granted, because you do so many events, but the people that you work with and work for, how much they love sports, and not just what particular sport you're covering at a time. They love competition, and that like just permeates. So probably maybe that, I thought, I knew everything about college basketball or NFL and NBA at the time, which now I know I knew nothing. But that was one of the things. And again, his kindness, and also a lady who came with him, Sharon Chang, also, gave me an opportunity, and they offered me an internship in New York at CBS Sports. And unfortunately, I didn't have any place to stay, and I wasn't able to take advantage of it. But Miss Chang told me, like, hey, when CBS Sports comes to Washington, D.C., and then at the time after, I graduated in Atlanta, Georgia, hey, we'll keep you kind of on our list. And they hired me as a runner or as a utility. So, even though I couldn't take advantage of the internship, they, kind of kept me in the loop, and I'm forever grateful.
As someone that, as you were making your way up the ranks and you worked as a utility, and at one point you were pulling cable cords, what was most self-growing or helping with the maturation process in your career when you're having to haul all of these cables and people on the outside have no idea what it takes from an organizational standpoint, everything that is on the line there, but you as a storyteller reliving those days and what people on the outside don't see about that?
Yeah, I mean, just how much work goes into before you actually see the event on your television screen. And, like 2 days of, I remember one of my earliest utility jobs right after graduation, like a week or two after graduation, is setting up for the Preakness Stakes in Baltimore. And it took a week to set up for a horse race that is literally over in less than 2 minutes. And just that. And but people are kind, and people understand if you work hard, and that they teach you things. Like, probably after my first like year or two, some of the camera guys that I work with, they would let me start to build their cameras even if they weren't there. And so just that, and learning, how to build cameras, what needs to be done, how to shore up the platforms that the cameras are, so there's no wobble or no wiggle, and strapping things down, or bagging up cameras properly when rain's coming, and there are things that probably I not probably I know I didn't do the first time correctly, but people took the time to teach me the right way.
How do you analyze the way in which, and Renardo Lowe is joining me, I'm Bryan Fenley, your need to be a perfectionist when, yes, that's important, but at the same time, a broadcast can always be better because we're humans. Nobody's perfect. So, how do you wage the way you attack perfectionism in your approach to the business?
It's very tough. It's very, very tough. Like you said, I consider myself a perfectionist, but I've yet to have the perfect broadcast. Um, but also, you have to kind of look at it from different ways. Um, you know, there's no script in certain things. In certain studio shows, yes, you have a script, but for the most part, when you're at the game, you don't know how the game's going to unfold in front of you. So how you're prepared and what your setup is and how you react to the, different scenarios. And then when you go back, there's probably always something that you wish you could have done differently, or as a lot of my crews or my colleagues say, it's the constant state of sports television. Could have been better, could have been worse, and it's all and you're always in the middle because there's someone that I remember hearing say is that with all of the things that have to go on, the engineering marvels that we took a multi-million-dollar piece of technology and rode it up a bumpy road, and yet everything plugged in and fired up the right way. That we should celebrate how many things went right to get on air than what went wrong. And that, and when you're around people who, not only, are perfectionists in their craft, but, also have the perspective that hey, could have been better and we'll try and get better, but it could have been worse. So you shouldn't sit and dwell on that.
Why do you think, Renardo, even outside the scope of work, as humans, it's so hard to celebrate the things we did, and we're always nitpicking at the things we could have done better? Unrelated to work, just in general, why do you think we're wired that way?
I mean, it's kind of, I think the people that are wired that way in a certain sense are successful because they set a standard. And, obviously, what we do, we're away from our families on, holidays and weekends. And if you're, doing something, you want it to be meaningful. So there's a standard there that you have to embrace. So that's part of it. And, people who I guess are comfortable with mistakes don't do very well or don't reach the highest level of our industry.
You brought up your family or family in general, Renardo. How has your family been a backbone to you in your pursuit of your dreams and the stages that you've taken in your career?
Wow, I can't tell you how fortunate I am from my parents, my wife, my kids. They, they accept that I won't be there for every holiday. There are a lot of things that I miss. Their birthdays, for friends, their funerals I've missed, weddings I've missed. And I guess the way that I come, they don't hold a grudge. They don't hold a grudge, and they fill me in on what I missed. And but in a certain way, I think they like that even though I'm not there, they're kind of connected. I know my mom still calls me and wants to know what game I'm doing and where it's going to air. And I say, Mom, we appreciate the rating, but you have other things to do than to sit and watch Villanova Creighton on a Saturday afternoon. So but I think that's a way they feel connected. And, I've gotten a chance to, bring my kids along on, great trips. They've met, a lot of really, really great people. And hopefully those memories that they have will make it worth it for the things that I've missed.
So obviously, when that happens, your kids get a kick out of it. But when you see your kids with you in your work setting, what about that is most exhilarating for you?
Ooh, I don't know if I call it exhilarating. I actually try to buffer my kids from the work version of me because there's probably, and I know a lot of people who might watch this might laugh because work Renardo is very loud, probably very impatient. Uh, but I try for them not to say. Occasionally they've seen me, in the chair. But and one of the things that I try to have with them, and they're, obviously times are different, and with social media and highlights on the phone, I don't think they're the sport fan that I was in my early 20s. But I wanted them to know that even though sports is a big part of our life and definitely my life, that they don't have to be a sports fanatic to be accepted in our family. Because my parents are huge sports fans. My wife, like even though there's a lot of sports going on in our house, they can kind of do their thing. I think the technology part of it, they enjoy. Uh, so I've tried to kind of let them find their own path, but be here if they do need advice or if they do need something from me. But that's kind of how I've played it so far. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but
I don't think there is a right or wrong answer, but with everything,
exactly.
yeah. And the sports are always on at the house. And you mentioned the necessity at times, as is the business, where there are events that come up and you miss things. And that's what everybody deals with. And maybe it's a child's birthday, but then you're able to make it up to that child. And so when you're able to do that, and we talk about obviously the challenge of traveling and missing things, but then when you do come back, what is your way of showing your kids that you love them?
Ooh. I mean, I just try to like listen and catch up. Try and I guess be of service. Like hey, and this is a few years ago, but I'll go to this AAU tournament, or I'll do this and do that. So just kind of being available when I can, and sometimes it's tough because I learned many years ago, like I can't take red eyes back because like I'm a wreck. Like
Yeah.
literally I was like, okay, I'm officially too old for red eyes because I get back, I'm wrecked, and then there's another day that I'm unavailable. So but yeah, just when you show up and do things like eat out, kind of listen to them. We kind of um talk like my my kids torture me for being an Atlanta sports fan.
Okay.
So that's always the joke, like, hey, you guys can't jump on the bandwagon, and they're like, well, you don't have to worry about it. We're not on the bandwagon. So,
So where do
but
you
it's
find
a lot of fun.
because of your roots as an Atlanta sports fan, where do you find your kids rebelling against you when it comes to sports fandom?
You know what? I think it's just that everybody kind of wants their own thing because I know people who are, my friends who are Dallas Cowboy fans because obviously, growing up the Cowboys were good, or just everybody connects that one thing. And I think just generations, whether it's the music you listen to or the things like nobody wants to be their parents. So, kind of that thing kind of probably figures into it.
If you were to go back to when you were a child, and now that you've had this experience of looking back and growing up, where do you find that when you were young that you are most like your parents?
Ooh, um, that's a very good question because uh, I used to think that I'm nothing like my parents. And I think the biggest, wow, that's interesting. Oh, I just thought my parents were like such worry warts about, what I was doing and, playing sports about, and I am the exact same way. And I, it was a couple of years ago, and I was, talking to my parents about, I think it was my oldest. Yeah, I think it was my oldest. And, just like he doesn't listen or, whatever it is that, normal parents, complain about. And my mom just looked at me and goes, he's just like you. And it like hit me like a punch in the chest. And I just looked at her. I was like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. If I am anything, or if I was anything like this, I am so sorry because now I get it.
So when you had that realization, that aha moment, then what did your mom say in response after you said that you were sorry?
She laughed because she like kind of like, oh yeah, not so fun now, is it? So I think yeah, she chuckled and kind of you know understood what I was saying.
What about the push that you've made in your career? How much of it can you have it think that it's tied to trying to impress your parents? And
Ooh.
even if that's like on a subconscious level, but just this idea of like, here you are at Howard, you're going places, you're making the necessary steps to rise up the rankings. And in the back of your head, you're thinking about not having your parents, like you said earlier, worrying about you and where your career in your life is going, when this moment of like, okay, they could say to themselves, okay, Renardo has it figured out. We don't have to worry about him, and he's doing a good thing.
Well, one, I don't think my parents will ever get to that point. They're always like, checking up on me and stuff like that. But I mean, I guess that's a very good question because, you know, my parents are both school teachers, and my dad was also a coach. So, and they knew the sports that I played, and obviously in the classroom. So I want to say, I kind of, maybe as a defense mechanism, wanted to be harder on myself. So then I was already prepared for whatever criticism or learning that I got from my parents. So I was like, look, you can't beat me up because I've already beat myself up. And I've already, self-corrected or done things like that. So, and maybe that carried to, just when you get, in college, or, how, and there's so many like kind of, I guess, mini tests, like, we get to see, players, fight through adversity, whether it's injury or, competition against things. But, there are times in, just any industry, how do you, work when you're sick, when you're sleepy, you're tired, you're hungry, when you're having to set up for a show and it's, a downpour of rain, and like just fighting through those moments, and also just pushing yourself because you don't want, I guess, the criticism that might come if you, drop the ball.
Yeah, and one thing that we know about Renardo Lowe, that man does not drop the ball. That's for sure. Hey, Renardo Lowe is with
Mm.
me. I'm Bryan Fenley, and this is the On to Something podcast. So it's so fascinating to learn about your mentality and the way you grew up and the way in which you thought and being hard on yourself. But at this stage of your life, where do you find the most positives that came out of being hard on yourself? Because there's this like instant reaction of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that. But actually, it probably served you well in a lot of different ways.
Oh, I've told many people that, my competitive nature has served, I guess, many, organizations well. Looking back on it, maybe it wasn't the best thing, maybe, some of the times. But I also think that, being hard on myself or setting a standard doesn't mean that you have to, belittle people, yell at people. I think teaching and, especially, younger people who are new into the industry, because I mean, sports with all the data and technology and the equipment is so much more complex than when I started. And so understanding that and kind of, I guess, taking more of a teaching role, because, like I said, I come from a line of teachers that, I think that part, I guess, fulfills me more these days. And, obviously earlier I was one of the younger people on the crew. So I was more in tune of learning the lesson than teaching the lesson.
As good as you are, Renardo, as at being a teacher and mentoring those who are coming up in the business, when you talked about earlier where adversity comes in from a broadcast perspective, where things are out of your control, whether it's weather or something gets in the way, and you and your team in the truck have to find a way to adjust. But what would you teach others about your own persistence and the own adversity that you overcame to get to where you are today?
I guess, there's people that have taught me, obviously, just work, the things you can control: work, attitude, professionalism, be elite at that. take advantage of opportunities that, in nothing that happens in your life really comes with a sign that says great opportunity here.
Sure.
Like you don't know it when it presents itself. And then, years down the road, you say, wow, what an opportunity that was. And you don't know, like just my I guess my fortune to be around like some of the like greatest minds, and not just sports, like the announcers I've worked with have such an elite level of just learning. So the times that you're at a restaurant or even waiting to board your flight, and they talk about the game and things that happen in it, and your ability to absorb that in, that is an incredible opportunity that 0.0001% of the population gets the chance of. I've had a chance to work for and with some of the greatest minds in broadcast, and the ability to listen to them, see how their mind thinks, and take advantage of just listening, and just the stories, and pushing that forward into your preparation, and how you execute the show and the telecast.
I love everything you said. Final question for you. Renardo Lowe is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. So, with all of the minds that you're able to be around that make you a better version of yourself in general, but then also working in broadcast, where do you find the knowledge, the mind of your wife influencing you the most in your own life?
Say that again. The knowledge of whom?
Of your wife, where she comes in
Oh,
and she influences you the most. You, like you were talking about, Renardo, being around all these great minds in the business, but being around the mind of your wife, how has she made you a better version of yourself?
you know what? She forces me to think outside of the box, and not, I guess, react in anger. And there's, I guess, an inside joke that we have, that everyone has dealt with some adversity or some slight that you've had to deal with, promotion you didn't get, or an assignment you didn't get, or some critique or whatnot. And so there, times where they're like, oh, here comes angry Renardo. And angry Renardo is going to try and direct the perfect show and take the whole show on his shoulders. And I guess it would be the equivalent of like Steph Curry trying to shoot the team back in single-handedly. And she's very conscious of my emotion getting involved, and then she forces me to kind of use my brain and not my anger, or at least understand where each one is playing a role in what I'm doing.
But when I hear
So
you say anger, Renardo, for me it sounds more like competitive fire. and and
absolutely.
and so that is what's made you so good at what you've done. And at with that, it's also like you said, it's great to have a wife who's that stabilizing presence when you come home and is able to be like, you did a great job, now let's focus on the kids. So she comes in as kind of like that really awesome intermediary. And even when you come home and the kids might root against you with different teams, I feel like
Yes.
the household still is at peace because your wife is there and she is able to sort of be that calming effect on everybody. Renardo Lowe, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much, man, for diving into your life and sharing your story. I really appreciated it.
No, thank you for having me.